Okay. Thanks for having me. This is a big project about the global banks project in my computational finance lab. My name is Oscar Granados. I come to Bogota, Colombia, Universidad Jorge, Tadeo, Lozano. Okay, my presentation is about the Bicliques and system risk in global banks, bipartite networks. What is the background of this project? Especially the Basel Committee of Banking Supervision has implemented a series of reforms aimed to enhancing the resilience of banks and banking system in response to the 2008 financial crisis. These reforms complement those enacted for the Financial Stability Board. And the reforms include assessment methodologies and additional requirements for global systematically important banks, the famous GSIB, to enhance loss absorbency. But this is indicator based in measuring approach in the cross-jurisdictional activity, size, interconnectedness, subsistability, financial institution infrastructure, complexity of the business complexity of the different banks. But in the list, we have probably 30 banks, and some banks start in the 2012. And some banks didn't exist in the list after some topics. Okay, the BBVA bank is a Spanish bank. Other new banks by the Bank of Communications of China. And other banks like UniCredit, obviously, Credit Suisse, the last year, and other banks. This is the evolution of banks. And the structure of the list creates different buckles. And JP Morgan always stay in the top of the list, and with the exception of the 2020. And the other banks probably present a structure in the different buckles with a specific year, but in some cases, the more stable banks are ING in the bottom of the list, Bank of China in the bottom of the list, and I don't remember the other that is in the, okay, the Sumitomo Mitsui in the bottom of the list. And what is the motivation of this paper? Given the highly dynamic nature of the global banking system, it is surprising that it remains governed by static regulatory frameworks, which may hinder banks' ability to promptly adapt to evolving risk and subsequent regulations. We recreate some questions about the global banks project, but we try to answer this question. How can we assess the impact of shareholder structure of the global financial stability? Why that represent these questions? We implement a different methods of geometric and topology mathematics, and we try to identify some topics about the bipartite networks. The structure of the shareholder of the banks, that is a bipartite networks, and we input we recreate an input, and we try to identify an output with a projections. In the figure A, we have a bipartite networks, and we recreate U projections, yeah, the shareholders structure, and the B projection of the bank's projections. Why we try to use this way? The simplest way is to project the bipartite networks onto an unweighted network without considering the frequency that a collaboration that has been registered. In this case, we didn't have weights. But the other model, we use weights. And if you check, the topology is different, because in this case, didn't use the weights, but in this case, we use the weights. The shareholders connections and the bank's connections. In this case, but this is a preliminary structure, but in the apply of the case, that is in this case, the shareholders, and the other is the bank's projections. But it's the same output, yeah? It's a superset of the U apostrophe. The other method is a Bicliques structures. In this case, we identify two kinds of Bicliques, the edges and the vertex. In the figure of A, we represent the connections between U nodes and B nodes. But in this case, we identify the edge maximum Bicliques and the vertex maximum Bicliques. In this case, we represent a structure that presents the connection with edges and vertex. The other methods is about algorithms with identified Bicliques. If the network is so big, we use different algorithms. Exists a lot of algorithms. It is the reference of the different algorithms. But in this case, we use the MBEA and the innovation of the authors, the Sang et al. And Bioinformatics, they use these algorithms for biology networks. But in this case, the structure of the shareholders is similar, not is equal, but is similar to a biological structure. The variation of the algorithms, that is, in this case, we create a new nodes, a new edges to identify the next Bicliques. The process finishes when the connection is empty, but the new variation of these algorithms didn't use they create a new nodes. They prefer to use evaluation of the next stage of the Bicliques. What is the data analysis to identify the different structures? This is the bucket. Yeah, we have 5 banks in the different buckets. JP Morgan always, except 1 year, is in the bucket in the top bucket, bucket 4. Bank of America, bucket 3. Barclays and Deutsche Bank, bucket 2, and Standard Chartered and Sumitomo Mitsui, bucket 1. If you check the principal 5 shareholders are in the top of the figure, but if you check some shareholders are connected with the principal banks. JP Morgan, the Vanguard Group, State Street Global Advisors, and the most important BlackRock Institutional Trust Company with connections with Standard Chartered, with connections with Barclays and Bank of America and JP Morgan. This is the example of the 5 principal shareholders of these banks. If you check the principal banks that an investor or shareholder has in its portfolio, that is the Vanguard Group. They have participation in 27 banks of the 30 global banks. In this case, the edges is the percentage of standing, yeah? The structure of the nodes is the market capitalizations, and the distance or the geography proximity is the the difference of geographical structure. Okay. In this case, the Vanguard Group has a participation in Morgan Stanley, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, BNY Mellon, Bank of America, Citigroup, State Street in United States, the top of the banks. In Canada, Toronto Dominion Bank, Royal Bank of Canada, UK, Standard Chartered, HSBC, Barclays, France, BNP Paribas, Crédit Agricole, Groupe BPC, Société Générale, Netherlands, ING, Switzerland, UBS, Germany, Deutsche Bank, Japan, Sumitomo Mitsui, Mizuho, and Mitsubishi UFJ. And China, ABC, CCB, Bank of China, and Industrial and Commercial Bank of China. In this case, the participation of the Vanguard Group in this bank, that is the representation of the shareholder structure in the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. When you identify that the Vanguard Group that present this structure of the global bank's structure, probably you decide what is the situation. In this graph, the final part of the data analysis, we identify the principal shareholders, first 10 or the greater or equal 1% of the participation of the bank. Only we have 200 shareholders. And when you check this structure, we identify some guys like the Vanguard Group, BlackRock, Sumitomo, and the problem is what happens if the connections or the interactions between the investors or shareholders with other banks. What is the results when you use the different methods that we checked before? The first, the projection. What happened with this projection? The big problem is that the projection has a lot of connections. If you talk about the global banks, we talk about the shareholder structure, not the interaction in the markets, nor is a business, nor is a commodities transaction, nor is a, it's not a currencies or derivatives business. It's a shareholders. 17 global banks have the same first or the second most important shareholder in the bank. 17. For the global for the regulators, and I don't know if it's a problem for them, but I think that is a problem because it's a concentration of the shareholder structure. Some people say, okay, but there is a trust structure, there is a fund, but let me finish to identify the big problem. The Vertex maximum Bicliques for the case of the two principal shareholders to the 30 global banks. This guy, one vehicle of BlackRock, 11 banks when they is the first or the second principal shareholders in the banks, and the other issue is they have 1% or greater or equal than 1% of the shareholder structure. In some cases, 8%, 5%, 6%. That is a huge amount of the structure of the global banks. And the other case, that is a H maximum Bicliques, that two shareholders have the first and the second shareholder structure for the three global banks. The first and the second, only two shareholders have a Spain Bank, Global Bank of the United States, and the Global and Regional Bank of the United States, Santander, Citibank, and Wells Fargo. If probably in some cases, these guys, the Vanguard Group and the BlackRock vehicle, probably 10 or 12, in some cases, 16% of the shareholder structure. What is the discussion of these results? Banks that play a significant role in the stability of the interbank system are not necessarily the largest according to the FSB rankings. However, the asset level is not always the most effective measure of capturing interactions in global market, because certain large banks, their substantial asset levels may have local structures with low volatility that will significantly impact global financial system stability. In this case, we talk about banks like Agricultural Bank of China, China Construction Bank, okay, but probably 3 years ago, China Construction Bank, and other banks like Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, and Wells Fargo in the United States. But in this case, what are the implications when a global bank shares the same principal shareholder as another global bank? The case of the Morgan Stanley with the 20% of the Sumitomo Mitsui Financial Group. The issue lies in shareholder exposure to volatility in the financial markets. Some shareholders probably have the exposition of the volatility of the markets. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, etc. But in this case, some colleagues and some regulators, funds and trust structures could serve as a barrier against the risk. I don't know. We can talk with Bear Stearns in the 2008 crisis. However, significant withdrawals and loss of capitalization could potentially impact the stability of the system. And probably this is a big mistake that some regulators and some colleagues think that is the fund and trust structure serve a barrier against the risk. And finally, there is another problem, that is a geometrical and topological problem, that in some cases, these shareholders may include other financial institutions or vehicles such as funds associated with other banks or no banking institutions. In some cases, BlackRock vehicle, in this case, the shareholders of BlackRock vehicle or the BlackRock company, that is another institution or other financial vehicle or bank, and cycle because this guy connect with this guy. That is a cycle, and I think that is a problem of the systemic risk. Sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, there is any question or comment from our online participants or on-site?
Just a quick comment. Yes, please. Thank you. So, I mean, just a comment. Many of the things that you mentioned seems to be somehow rephrasable in terms of hypergraphs, right? You're using bipartite graphs, and bipartite graphs are basically a Levy representation of hypergraphs, and they could be interchangeably used. So what I'm saying is that in the hypergraphs, actually, there are rich structural features and tools and methods of investigation that might somehow, that's what you're trying to do, somehow looking at the structural order and leaks and other things in this structure. And for example, Bicliques in this sense would be just a hypergraph, right?
Yep.
If you're looking at the biggest Biclique, then it means that you're looking for maximum hypergraph. So maybe somehow rephrasing some of these things in terms of hypergraph, although they are basically the same, but it's a different language. And,
Yep. Yeah, for the hypergraph structure, probably I group some nodes. Why? Because if you check the shareholders of different banks, we have different vehicles of BlackRock or State Street. You can create a group or a node of these financial vehicles and recreate one node of BlackRock. That is a good option. Because in this case, we use only the first 10 shareholders. But in some occasions, probably 5,000 shareholders, but they have a 1 less percent or 0.01% or something like that, okay? But the hypergraph is a good option. Thank you very much. And the next part of the research that is create in this case, okay, the Bicliques and the homology persistent in these projections, because we identify some phases that permit to elaborate a structure to the shareholders, to identify shareholders' structure. That is the other part of the research. Thank you very much.
So let's thank again our speaker. And this concludes today's afternoon session, and we will meet again tomorrow at 9 for another exciting day of workshop. Thank you.